Bonjour, welcome to Wahsa Citizens Education Center's radio Zoom classes. This is SVN3E, grade 11 workplace science, and I'm Bronwyn Slade. If you'd like, you can't participate live today, sorry, as this is a pre-recorded lesson and I am not there. You can listen on the radio at 91.9 FM or also on the television at Bell Express U channel 72. Usually you can join me live through the Zoom link, which is available from me, your teacher, and also your DEC. Our classes are scheduled Monday through Thursday from 10 to 11 in the morning, and we are in our 9th and final week of our 9-week course. So a reminder, the key questions are listed at the end of each of your IL lessons. You need to do all of them. Some are check your understanding questions, some are activities, and some are review questions. Please explain your ideas and thoughts in complete sentences and make sure you're actually answering the question that is being asked. You can do this by hand or electronically. If you're going to do it by hand, you're welcome to write in your workbook. It is yours to take notes or to write in, but the spaces for the review questions in particular are not very large, so I strongly encourage you to write on a separate piece of paper in order to hand in your work in a clear way. If you're going to hand it in electronically, PDF, Word, and Google files are the easiest ones for us to access. Google Doc files everyone has access to through their NNEC email address, and we're happy to walk you through how to do that if you need help. If you need to use a different type of file, most likely it is fine. Just let us know so we can make sure we can open it. So how do you submit your work? There's 3 different methods. The first is to send your work in electronically. If you've done it by hand, you can scan it with a device. The Apple devices have a Notes app that comes with it for free, and the Android devices have a Google Drive app that comes with it for free. So you can use those to scan if need be. If you need to take pictures, that's fine. They're just scanning it are smaller files and a little bit easier for us to manage. Then you can send it to studentwork at nnec.on.ca, and you need to CC it to John, who is the course marker now. His email address is jstradiotto@nnec.on.ca. The second method is to drop your work off in Sioux Lookout at our location at 74 Front Street. We're the bright red building next to the post office, and we have a small white mailbox next to our side entrance. We are not yet open to the public, but hopefully soon. For now, just continue to put your work in that mailbox and we'll get it back to you as soon as we can. The third option is to hand your work into your DEC. Your DEC can either send your work through the Express or fax it to 807-737-1732 or toll-free fax to 1-800-463-7852. If you'd like to connect with me through social media, both my Facebook and my YouTube channel are under the name B Slate Wahsa. If you friend me on Facebook and subscribe to my YouTube channel, you'll get notifications every time I upload one of our lessons. All of our radio Zoom classes are recorded and uploaded to YouTube under a playlist called SVN3E, and all of our supplementary videos that are available on YouTube are also listed there so you can access them from their primary sources. Science is really visual. I incorporated as many videos, diagrams, charts, graphics, illustrations that I can in order to really help understand what it is that we're talking about. So I strongly encourage you to access the videos, either joining me live through Zoom or accessing the YouTube videos on your own time. If you do not have access to reliable internet, this is completely understandable. So please just let us know and we can send you a copy of all of our recordings. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to us here at Wahsa. We are here to help. If you want to talk directly about the course material as according to these videos, please contact me. My email address is bronwyn.slate@nnec.on.ca, and my Facebook is bslatewahsa. If you want to talk about something related to the assignments or marking, contact John, and his email address is jstradiotto@nnec.on.ca. You can call us both at the main office at 807-737-1488, extension 22 2209 is my extension. 2210 is John's extension. You can also call us toll free at 1-800-667-3703. John's office hours are Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 3:30, although he takes lunch from 12:30 to 1:30 and is not available then. I think it's really important to position myself within the context of this course, as my educational experience shapes how I teach. I have white settler ancestry. I have white privilege, and this has shaped how I experience education, making it easier for me and I'm having less barriers than other folks. I recognize this, and while I cannot change that, I continue to work towards disrupting this cycle and making changes to our education system. I live in Northwestern Ontario on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe people, and I work to incorporate this culture and knowledge into our science courses. As an educator, I have lots to learn and unlearn, and this is a lifelong journey that I'm committed to, though I will make mistakes. Our textbook is also Eurocentric, meaning that it centers the white experience in both the communities that it showcases and also the scientists that it refers to. It ignores Indigenous, Inuit, and Métis knowledges and experiences, and this is problematic and disappointing. Unfortunately, I've not been able to find another resource, and when I'm no longer responsible for this course at the end of term 1A, I will not be able to, it will not be my job and my priority to find this. Hopefully, Wahsa will continue to look for more meaningful resources.
All right, we are reviewing units 4 and 5 today. So a reminder what the final assessment looks like. It is not an exam, it is a culminating assignment. So it is a project that takes a bit of time. It covers all 23 of the lessons, but it is open book. You can use your assignments, your YouTube videos, your IL booklet and workbook. Everything is accessible to you. You can use what you like. It is not timed, but it does have a deadline. Ideally, your deadline is this week, June 10th, though I do have some flexibility if you arrange it with me prior to June 10th. The structure will likely be unfamiliar, as our questions have been very much textbook questions in terms of reading information and regurgitating it back. This is more of an application and thinking project. All right, lesson 13, our first in unit 4, non-renewable and renewable energy sources. So we talked about the fossil fuels that we depend upon and that are depleting and how this is problematic. Specifically, we looked at coal, crude oil, natural gas, and nuclear power, and how each of them work as non-renewable energy sources. Then we looked at renewable energy sources and the options that have already been developed and what could be developed further. So specifically, we looked at hydroelectricity, solar with photovoltaic, active, passive, and concentrating systems. Looked at wind, both horizontal axis and vertical axis. We looked at tidal and geothermal, biomass, and then hydrogen fuel cells. All of these are different options for generally creating electricity. So these are energy sources that are renewable that we could tap into greatly, though it would take work for us to change our ways of doing things and change our systems that we have in place in terms of how we extract and access energy sources. So looking at the review questions, this one is on page 109, number 2. What is the role in steam for producing electricity from a power plant? So many of our energy sources work such that we have so we have our energy source, and that could be coal, or has been coal, it could be natural gas, nuclear power, and so generally something that creates heat. Geothermal, so it heats water. And then the steam from the water gets shunted through from some sort of system, and it ends up, my drawing is not amazing, but it ends up working with a turbine. So the steam moves the turbine, and then that is attached to a generator, and then electricity is created. So the steam is what is used to move the turbine, which then creates the generator, then creates kinetic energy that we can transfer into electricity. So that is the role of steam. You do not have to draw a diagram. You could explain that in words, but I decided to draw a diagram this time and talk it through. Number 4, what method of solar power would you use for the following situations? A, to heat water for use in your house. So I remember what we just listed, what the 4 different types of solar power are, or the ways of harnessing solar power. But honestly, in this moment, I don't remember which is best for what. So if that is your reality, go back and look in your book. So I would think that for heating water in a house, most likely active solar technology would be the best method for actually heating the water in your house. To generate electricity for a summer cottage, I would think that probably I would think that photovoltaic would make the most sense, as it makes an actual electric current. And then heat a room in a house, this passive solar would work very well. Number 6, why is the process of fermentation important to creating biofuels? So remembering biofuels are taking organic plant material and animal waste and transferring the energy that is in those things to generally create heat that then can be used to drive turbines, just like we talked about in terms of steam. So, but the biomass, the process of fermentation, we're creating biofuels, is how we change biomass to a biofuel through fermentation. So we take all that waste and we are able to ferment it, so it breaks down by microorganisms, so by bacteria, by yeast, so it breaks it down, and then it creates the biofuels. So the fermentation breaks down biomass, and then that converts it to a biofuel. Okay, lesson number 14, the costs and benefits of using different energy sources. So now in lesson 13, we talked about what the energy sources are, but then why in lesson 14, we talked about what are the benefits of them, why we should use them, but also what are the costs, what are the things that are not so great about them. So we looked specifically at natural gas and nuclear. Right now, there is really well-defined infrastructure set up, and we get a high energy return. So if we get a lot of energy from these sources. However, they have high levels of pollution and waste, and therefore they are very detrimental to our environment. So the cost is really the environmental cost opposed to the financial cost. We have great financial gain, but significant financial cost. So that's the reality of all non-renewable energy sources. But then we looked at wind and hydro in terms of examples of renewable energy sources, and they have no emissions or waste. So we are not for these cases, we are not adding to the current climate crisis that we are experiencing. We are not having to figure out how to deal with a waste product in order to create this energy. So we're not setting our future generations to have to deal with something like nuclear waste. We say, okay, we're just going to put it in this container and we're good to go for right now. But in future generations are going to have to deal with that as those containers degrade and that waste leaks into the environment. But with wind and hydro and many other renewable sources of energy, it is a large initial financial investment. The big changing of our systems, so either creating the plants and the structures that are extract these renewable resources, or also how we use them. So like in terms of electric cars, most of our cars are gas and diesel vehicles. So if we are going to use electricity that we can harness from wind and hydro, all of our cars need to change to not be fuel combustion engines, which that is a huge investment that we would have to do in order for that to happen. And then also, so far, renewable energy sources do not have as much of an energy return as fossil fuels. So we get a big bang for our buck for fossil fuels, and we get a little bang for our buck for wind and hydro. Being in a capitalist system means that we do not want a little bang. So if we're focusing on the economy and on the financial aspects, as many people in power do, like money is important, that's where the power is. So the fossil fuels is where the money comes from. The renewable energy sources is not where you get money. So then we look at a little bit more at biofuels and how it is more renewable than fossil fuels because we create a lot of waste. And it has less emissions, but that's still being looked into. It's because it's new. There's little to no change needed, which means that all those cars that I was talking about, how we don't have to change them over, potentially they could still use biofuels. So we wouldn't have to change our way of our vehicles, but it means that are we really changing our habits if we don't have to have a dramatic change? Are we just going to continue the same way that we're continuing and create a new problem? Particularly as biofuels, potentially that source of fuel could be used for food. And we want to be conscious of if we're creating a food crisis, which in some places of the world is already very desperate in terms of accessible, clean, healthy food. So is it really better to be using our sources and our resources to create food for fuel opposed to creating food for people? Where's our value system? All right, so then on page 117 for the review questions, number 6, explain what you believe is the biggest disadvantage of generating electricity from nuclear power. So this is what you believe, which means it is an opinion question. There is not a right answer. It is fine to have a different belief of what I believe. You don't need to find the same answers that I do. You just need to explain why you think that. Opinion questions are all about justifying and about backing up your opinions. So we can totally have different opinions. If you don't believe that there's any disadvantages of nuclear power, you better be able to explain that using course material really, really well. But I believe biggest disadvantage is the waste. So because we do not have safe, sustainable solution for it. Right now, we're kind of just burying it and hoping that it's all going to work out okay. And that I don't think is okay. All right, number 10, describe the 4 criteria that must be met for building a wind farm. I remember talking about this in this exact moment. I don't remember what they are, so I'm going to look it up in our book. again, the joys of having access to your resources is that if you don't remember things, then look it up. That is completely reasonable. I don't expect everything to be in your head. So they need to have adequate wind speed. So it needs to actually get enough power if you're going to set up a wind farm. So it needs to be measured for about a year to make sure that the wind speed and the weather are good. So for the wind turbines, it needs to have low environmental impact. So it can't disturb the migratory patterns of birds. It can't affect the natural environment. We can't be wiping out a whole bunch, like a big forest, in order to put in a wind farm. That's not okay. We need to be using something where it makes sense. It needs to be approved by the hosts. So the community needs to be okay with it, as it is going to have an impact on their land and on their own situations. And it needs to have be financially viable. So it can't be too hard to maintain. It can't be the costs of moving the electricity from where they generate it to someplace where it can be passed onto the grid. It needs to all be connected. It needs to all make sure that it makes sense financially as well in order for it to actually be utilized. All right, number 11, explain the positive and negative impacts on building a hydroelectric dam near a town. So some of the negative impacts is that change to ecosystem, which could result in loss of food. Right, because if plants get wiped out and then animals who are dependent upon those plants get wiped out, or the changes in the water means that communities could lose sources of food. It could flood homesteads, private land. So there could be loss of property. Right now in Sioux Lookout and other communities, we're experiencing a lot of flooding, and we know how much that of an impact that's having on communities, and that's natural flooding. So having a hydroelectric dam and having flooding could have a really large really change things for people. The positive impacts is that it could be job creation, as anytime a power plant or something comes to a community, they need workers. So that could be really useful for a community. And it is renewable energy. So that means it has less environmental long impacts in the same way that fossil fuels have the emissions impact, whereas the hydroelectric dam have a different kind of impact, but it is a renewable energy source. Okay, lesson number 15, conserving energy. So we talked about what the energy sources are. We talked about how to access them and what the costs and benefits are. And then we talked about, so conserving energy is a good option in terms of us not using as much. Then we don't need to extract as much. We don't need to have as much if we are using less. So first, we just talked about the units of measurement in terms of energy, just so that we know what we're talking about. And then we talked about different ways to conserve energy, specifically looking at light bulbs, Energy Star appliances, programmable thermostats, and energy efficient windows. We chose about how you can, beyond just the products that you buy, but how you can choose to conserve energy. So you can choose renewable energy within your, how you are getting your electricity into your home. So you could ask for it to be from renewable energy sources. I was not able to figure out how to do that in my own community. I don't know if that's accessible for all of us. Just, it could be something to look into. That there are government incentives in terms of like grant programs where you, if you invest in your home in terms of making it more energy efficient, that you could apply for a grant program and get funding to support you to help do that. And then variable pricing, which is like time of use pricing, which we now have in place so that we are trying to use electricity when it is cheaper, which is when there's less draw for it, when there's less requirement for it, and because with electricity, it is available when it's generated, and when it's not, it's not. So if there's a big pull on the grid at the same time, then that's really problematic. So doing it things overnight or on the weekend when there are less businesses in place or active means that there's less of a demand for it, and it sort of balances out overall. So review questions on page 2025, number 3. Compare and contrast standard incandescent light bulbs and compact fluorescent light bulbs. So we looked at this, we watched a video about light bulbs, and we also included LED light bulbs, as LED are even better than compact fluorescent light bulbs. So really, incandescent light bulbs are cheap. Initial cost is cheap. Like a couple of cents, basically, less than $1. But the long-term costs are much higher. So you get cheap light bulbs when you go to the store, but then you have a high electricity bill in the long run. Whereas compact fluorescent light bulbs and LEDs, which I'm just going to add, have a high initial cost. Like, it seems ridiculous. But long-term savings. So you, just by putting that money up front, means that you end up saving, it doesn't balance out, you end up saving a significant amount of money on your hydro bill when you use CFL or LED light bulbs. LED ones are the best ones, though they do seem like, it seems ridiculous to buy a $50 light bulb because we're used to buying a 35-cent light bulb. But that just means that we're not spending $300 or $400 on electricity and having to keep buying new light bulbs, where that LED light bulb lasts you for 10 years and cuts down your electricity costs. What is meant by the term time of use pricing? So this I just briefly chatted about in terms of variable pricing. So it's based on time of day. So I don't have it all memorized, but I know that year round it's cheapest to use electricity between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. This I have. Oh, and on weekends. So I deeply ingrained into my brain in terms of when I do laundry. Basically, when I do laundry, when I run the dishwasher, I want to run the dishwasher after 7 p.m. I do laundry after 7 p.m. if I have to do it during the week. Most of the time, I just do it on the weekends and holidays. But who wants to do their laundry on holidays? Anyway, it happens sometimes. So the peak hours switch depending on the season. So that is difficult. I never remember. I looked at the diagram lots of times. Here it seems to say that in your booklet, it says something a little bit different than what I understand it to be. This is from 2009. I would think in 2022, it's probably different than what it says in your book. Let's go back to our lesson where I used updated information. But basically, I always use as much electricity. I mean, the prime times that I use electricity are from after 7 till 7 in the morning and on weekends. So that's how I just do it in my head. Number 8, why do you think Canadians use so much more energy than people in other countries? So I think, to me, I think it is a combination of high heating costs or high heating needs, I guess. There are lots of places that are not as cold as we get at all. And I think that extensive travel distances, you have a big country, and if we are shipping things from one place to another place, we have to use a lot of energy to do that. And then I think there's also a certain amount of privilege. We are privileged as a whole community or a whole country. Obviously, there are underprivileged people, individuals, and even groups of people that it's not as simple as that, but that we are privileged and we take it for granted. I know that I probably do. So something to be conscious of. All right, lesson 16, protecting the environment at work. So here we talked about the for ours, reduce, reuse, recycle, and recover. We talked about how it makes sense to do them in that order, that it is best to reduce our consumption of energy materials, resources. Then it is the next option is to reuse the energy that we have extracted or the resources that we have already extracted, to recycle, to repurpose the things that we've already extracted and build them anew, or recover. So then extract the energy, what energy we can from these resources that we've already extracted from the earth in order to get as much as we can out of them. And then we talked about how in workplaces there are procedures, practices, and protocols that are set up in order to make sure that you're reaching for good, strong goals and results of how to improve. Then this allows for practices to be in place and to be more well established and work better. And then protocols to make sure that to check those plans and to make sure that things are working in the way that we hope them to. So number 1, what are 2 benefits of following the 4 R's when dealing with waste? So I think that one benefit is less waste in landfills and oceans. You are not polluting things. So that's good. I think that less resource extraction is also really good. We aren't taking more things out of the earth for our consumption. Number 6, give an example of a recyclable material and a recycled material. So a recyclable material is something that you can recycle. So I'm going to say a soup can is a recyclable material. Many places can recycle metal. And I'm going to say well, there are lots of things that say that they're made partially from recycled materials. Pop bottle is a recycled material. So the tricky thing with this is that many things that are recyclable also are made from recycled material, and many things that are made from recycled materials are recyclable, which is good, but it's to differentiate the two of them makes it a little confusing. Number 14, what is one change that can be made in your school to help protect the environment by using the 4 R's? I would say instead of your school, as we aren't in a school building, just say work or home. I think that and we don't recycle our paper very well. Schools recycle and reduce paper use. Every school that I've ever worked in it uses so much paper, it frustrates the heck out of me. I try to do as many things electronically as I can and recycle the paper, reuse the paper, and I do reduce, reuse, and recycle my paper. I try to minimize the amount of use. I reuse it. I always have a stack of, if I do have paper that I can use on the back of that paper, and then I recycle the paper when I'm finished with it. So I think that's a way that we all could probably, our schools could definitely do that better. Okay, lesson 17, dealing with workplace hazards. So this is the types of hazards we talked about were biological, chemical, and physical that could happen in the workplace. So in order to minimize these risks of these hazards, we talked about the hazardous household product symbols, which is the HHPS system, and the workplace hazardous material information system, which is the WHMIS. And we looked at how those help, understanding those symbols helps to set yourself up for success and safety within the workplace. And then we talked about prevention and protection, so how we can minimize these risks and not be impacted by these hazards as much, particularly at the source is the best place to do it, then along the pathway, and then finally at the worker is the last sort of stage in terms of the workplace of preventing, protecting from hazards. So number 4, describe 3 ways biological hazards can be avoided. This is on page 143. So thinking about biological hazards are things like diseases, things that create like bacteria or viruses that could create hazards in the workplace. So one way to do this is keep workplace clean, making sure that you're not cross-contaminating things. Another way is to inspect risk areas and operations. So yes, it's good to keep places clean, but also keep inspecting them, check them to make sure that that cleaning is actually being effective. And then also sterilize tools and substances, tools, and then pasteurize substances in order to kill the bacteria. Okay, number 5, explain the difference between acute and chronic effects of chemical hazards on the human body. So remember that acute means short term, and chronic is long term. So both can be significant, both can be really, really quite detrimental and really life-changing. But acute generally happens like immediately or within a couple of days, whereas chronic is something that happens, your body's going to react to it over a long period of time. So it might be slow and still be painful and miserable, but really understanding what's going on could be something that is lifelong, and you are, it's a long-term process. Number 7, what is the best protection against workplace hazards? So we talked about how that dealing with the best way is to deal with hazard at the source. So this means that people are protected from accidents happening, because accidents happen all the time. However, this is generally more expensive, and therefore companies generally don't want to do this because it is a bigger investment. And then lesson 18. So making buildings energy efficient. So we talked about designing energy efficient buildings, particularly trapping air in the envelope and designing better envelopes. So that's the barrier of containing warm air inside and making sure cold air making sure that warm air doesn't escape into the cold air systems. And then we talked about energy efficient appliances and motors and heaters. So we talked about a couple of different ways that houses can be designed and classified. So our 2000 homes, smart homes, and zero energy buildings are all ways that, with various steps, that homes can be classified as they are energy efficient buildings. And then we also talk about how to retrofit old buildings for energy efficiency. So changing windows, lights, and appliances, improving insulation, and using alternative energy sources if possible, and how there's sometimes government incentives to do that. So review questions for number 4, identify one result in a poorly designed building envelope. So remember, if we have a house, old school, square with a triangle on top, the building envelope is this sort of space between the exterior and the interior of the house. So it isn't an actual envelope, but it is a way of sealing off the house. So a poorly designed building envelope means that heat will escape. So it can be in large quantities, it can be quickly and consistently, but basically it means that your heat will escape, and therefore you will end up having to put more heat into your house, and then your house will be really cold in the winter and potentially hot in the summer, because heat will enter the house in the summer if your house isn't well sealed off. Number 9, why is a double glazed window more energy efficient than a single pane glass in a window? So a single pane glass is really just a barrier for wind. So it blocks wind, which is great, and it keeps heat in. But a double pane glass has gas in it, often radon, and it then takes from the sun, it traps heat and creates a little bit of an extra barrier in the winter, but also means that so a combination of trapping heat and repelling heat, so that it doesn't come into the house. And the same on the inside is that the heat molecule bounce off and stay on the inside when you want to have your home heated. So that double glass pane creates a little extra barrier. It adds to this envelope, and it helps to bounce more heat. The sun molecules off so that you aren't getting overheated in the summer, but also traps that heat and contributes to warming your home in the winter. Number 14, why is using newer energy efficient and more expensive appliances actually saving you money? So it's a large initial investment, but long-term savings. Due to lower energy costs, like hydro. So if anybody has ever received a $700 hydro bill, that being less because you've been able to improve your furnace or improve your insulation, makes a really huge difference in the long run. All right, and that is our lesson today. So that is our review for chapters 4 and 5. As always, if you have any questions, please reach out. I'm here to discuss it with you. You can call me at 807-737-1488, extension 2209, or toll free 1-800-667-3703. You can email me at bronwyn.slate, and that's spelled BRONWYN.SLATE@nnec.on.ca. You can connect with me through Facebook at B-Slate Wahsa, or YouTube, also at B-Slate Wahsa. Good luck with your review and completing all of your assignments. Thank you so much for joining me. Mwich.